Hi, my name is Andre, and I'm your host in Creating an Extraordinary Life. You know, many times when I like your passion, but you know something, to follow those dreams and passions, you need to have energy. How about confidence? Let's talk about inner confidence. I mean, that's
everything.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
We may not want to eat it because we may not feel well an hour later.
5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then I go back to bed. My whole
that you can, different practitioners that you can contact.
So you have this regular life, and then come Friday night. So what is that?
capitalist system that ties us all together.
Biased. I believe she's the #1 mom coach in the world, I'm sure. I love to coach. I love to help people in business. I love, like, I'm an actually went about it, and on the other side, you went from something negative to making a difference. Hi, my name is Andre, and I'm your host in Creating an Extraordinary Life. Today's show is about creating an extraordinary wealth. How do you build that extraordinary wealth? Well, we all know about the regular system that we thought from our parents. You go to college, and then you graduate, and then you get your job, and then the second job, and then you get a promotion and another promotion, right? We all know that. But you know something? Not everybody follows the same route. Well, the other day I'm driving, and as I'm driving, I see this car, this beautiful car, a Viper. For those of you that know, it's a beautiful car, convertible, and I love convertibles. And I look at the license plate, and it says dropout. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta stop. I thought it was great. So I stopped the car, and you know, and I go look at the owner, and I meet Rich. Rich, welcome.
Thank you.
And this is his partner, Chris. And you know, we started talking, and I said, tell me your story. And I love this story, and I asked him to be on the show. And thank you for coming, Rich.
Thank you so much.
So, thank you, Chris. And so tell us, how did this happen? And to get that car, I tell you, I love the car.
Well, I've had the car for a number of years, and basically, you know, I'm a stockbroker. I run, you know, a business alongside my partner, and we've built it up to, you know, about 15 employees. And right in Massapequa, same high school I went to, same area. Haven't, you know, stretched anywhere too far. But basically, when I got into business, I didn't know the difference between stocking shelves or stocks, you know. So it was all new to me. I enrolled in college, and basically within 2 weeks, they started teaching about the stock market, and I quit in the middle of class. And my dad was a little pissed because, you know, he had just paid my tuition. And I'm like, Dad, you know what? I could do this. I want the shortcut. I wanted to be able to make the money that doctors can, and just get to that point. And I feel that, you know, me and my partner have achieved that, and I think that we're going somewhere, you know, as any other doctor when they go to school is doing. And why go to school for so long if you could do something and you have a gift, and you're good with people, and you're knowledgeable with the market, which I consider myself to be. You're just better off going, you know, that route if you can do that. And we started off as a 3-man shop, actually, in his bedroom, because he had a bigger bedroom than I did. And we opened up our own place, been running it, and we built a wealth managed department. We have an exclusive deal with an accounting firm that has 40,000 clients, and you know, we've built ourselves up, you know, as big as we're going to go a lot bigger, but it's done very well, and you know, we like to reward ourselves. You know, just got a 32-foot boat, got the car. You know, I've owned businesses, he's owned bars. You know, we're all about making money, and, you know, straight up entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's great. So how old were you when, you know, you had
18.
18 years old. So 18, I mean, so many 18 years old think and probably do what you do. But then their mother's like, go back to school. I don't want to hear this anymore.
No,
I paid for your tuition, right?
Yep.
Don't come home. I'm going to throw you out of the house. But you stood your ground.
Yeah. Well, my father told me to give, because I had a rough time. He told me to, you know, to give up. And you know, just go get a salary job. And I said, there's no way I could do this. These ads say you can make, you know, 6 figures. I'm like, I believe I can do it. And you know, even with my family doubting me, I proved them all wrong. You know?
Wow.
And I think I've proven a lot of people wrong. And I'm going to continue to do that. I want to be a role model. And not that dropping out of college is the right thing to do, but if you have a plan and you know what you want to do and you feel you could achieve it, you just not let anyone tell you anything different. You know, you have to give it a shot. You know, and that's what I feel I did. And I feel that it's worked out to the best of our ability that we've done. And I think it was the smartest decision that we made. Was leaving college and doing it. Now, if you have to go to college for something that like a doctor or something like that, there's no way around it. But if you're good at this or good at anything, owning a business or something like that, you could achieve anything you want. And I feel that I've done that. I graduated, I think 400 in my class out of 500. And I probably I'm up there with probably people that I've spoke to as far as doing good, and doing something with their lives.
Wow, that's great. How about you, Chris? You have a similar story? Like, what happened with you?
Somewhat similar. I didn't necessarily drop out of college. Actually, Hofstra didn't accept me. Did a small stint in Fort Benning, Georgia, in the Army. A couple months. I was out. It wasn't for me. I got back, did a couple of interviews. Had interviewed at the firm he was working at, same year. I was 19, 20 years old, and just kept on from there. We've been through a lot of markets. I mean, we were in markets where people got destroyed back in 2000. We were just getting our licenses when the bubble burst and everybody was losing everything. Continued. Actually left the business for a little bit, do a couple other things. I decided to get into being a bar owner. Did that for a little while, and then eventually, Rich calls me back and says, "What are you doing?" I says, "Not much." I was in the process of actually selling the bar. Became profitable within about a year and a half's time. I had the opportunity to sell it. Rich called me and said, "Listen, here's what we're doing. Come back into the business." And we started again. I went to a firm that he was working at, and 2-3 years later, I said, "Rich, what are we doing?" I said, let's leave this place. Let's start our own branch. One day we met up at the beach.
Yeah, we just happened to be at the beach. We didn't even know each other's we were going to be there.
I got there with my girl and said, "Hey," I saw his car, red Viper. I said, "Man, what's Rich doing here?" We're walking on the boardwalk, met each other. I said, "Rich, listen, this is what I've been thinking. For about a month or two, I've been thinking, man, we should really be doing our own. Let's open up our own business, our own firm." And after that day, that's it. Within about a month's time, we were out the door and, getting pushed back, because it was definitely easier said than done. To open up your own branch and start to run your own business is a completely different story than having to work for somebody else. But you either want it or you don't. And if you're an entrepreneur at heart, which me and Rich are definitely, you're gonna achieve. You're gonna achieve what it is you want, plain and simple. We both own different businesses, tanning salon. I've had 2 bars so far. One about 3 or 4 years ago that again sold it for another profit, and I'm more than happy with the partnership me and Rich have achieved over the last couple of years. I mean, the last 4 years have been nothing short of challenging. That I could tell you. From transition to today, it's been nothing short of challenging. Again, more difficult markets to face, ups and downs. Anybody who knows the markets knows exactly how that works. But to be actually in it and to run the firm and deal with that all at the same time is, again, easier said than done. So.
And I think we're more educated than a lot of other people. We learn about everything. We have CEOs fly from all over the country, meet with us. We've done the closing bell on national TV for NASDAQ. So I think there's a lot of education that we know, just on different pharmaceutical stocks. I mean, different sectors. I mean, stuff that the average person, just wouldn't, know. So it's a good industry to be in. You learn a lot just about the economy, what's going on in life, where money's flowing. So it's not just about numbers and stuff. You really, I feel like, when it's clinical trials on a new drug or something like that, I mean, there's a lot that goes behind it. And we do a lot of our own research too, which is really cool. We don't have an analyst. We pretty much take a hands-on approach to everything. And we have business owners all over the country that we deal with.
That's great. I want to go back to what Chris was saying about, do you think an entrepreneur is born? Because I know, me too. I went into business when I was 18. I didn't tell you guys, but I went to college when I was 23 years old. And but I don't know if it was by choice. I was already working in my father's restaurant. But I've seen now there is no other way. I mean, I cannot work for people. And I love business. I love it. It's like a baby. When I've started many companies, and then I've trained people. Now my second career is as a life coach, and I love to see people transition and watch them grow. I just love business. I love it. Each business to me is like a baby, and watch it grow. But a lot of times I wonder, like, is entrepreneurs, like, are we born this way, or what do you think?
I absolutely think so. Can you go to school and listen to somebody talk for a couple of semesters and them try to teach you how to be a business owner? You probably could, but at the end of the day, if you don't have it inside you, you're probably going to fail. You know, it's the guys that are born with that mentality, I think, go a lot further in life as far as being an entrepreneur is concerned. Anybody could open the door to a deli and say, okay, I want to run a deli. But do you have it inside you? Can you tough out the bad months? Can you manage a group of employees? Not most people can. Not most people can handle the pressure. So absolutely, I do think it is something inside you. I think it is something you're born with. I take my father, for example. I mean, me and him are complete opposites. You know, he likes the stability of what he's managed to accomplish over the last 20 years. For what he's been doing for the last 20 years. In my case, stability is okay, but stability on my terms is a completely different story. And that's a difference between somebody who's born with wanting to be an entrepreneur and somebody who just wants to work and make a good living for themselves through somebody else's, working for somebody else. Definitely not for me. Like you said, I can't do it. He can't either, and it'll never happen.
No.
You know.
I think one thing that's good too is like the whole attitude. If you instill in your mind that this is the decision I made, this is I have nothing else. I'm going to make this work, and just be relentless and never give up. I think that's what's really taken us to where we are today. Is just because we obviously when you're in business you go through a lot of things, and I just think that we just kept whatever negative stuff came, we just put it behind us, kept going forward, and I think that's what really pushed us up the ladder. And I think if anyone is looking to do that and to go after something, they have to take that attitude. Because if you hit a roadblock, you have to knock it down. Otherwise, it's just going to keep you getting to the next level.
And also, as we know, I mean, there's a roadblock every single day. Sometimes many
absolutely.
One day. One thing I like to say, because I opened up a chain of stores, and I remember when I used to go inside of each store, they used to look at me like, Andrew's so lucky, but they didn't see. They don't see when things don't work out. They only saw me, Andre does nothing all day, he hangs out at the beach, and then he decides to come in and collect. But they don't see when you're going out of business, or the market is churning, or there is a compensation audit and the accounting's got something messed up. Now who they're going to call? They're not going to call the guy behind the counter that is managing the store. They're going to call the owner, which is me, the guy that is holding the most percentage. So that's a side that I see people don't see.
No.
And I think that's where the entrepreneur spirit comes. And you said something about your father and the stability, and then you said stability on your own terms. Say more about that.
Stability on your own terms, what I mean by that is creating your own personal stability the way you want it done. Of course, when you open up your own business and you become an entrepreneur, you want to create your own stability in a way where you set the terms. How much you want to make is unlimited to how much you actually want to work at what you're doing. Stability in terms of just doing something for somebody else means you're pretty much set at where you get a raise this year, you get another raise, and so forth and so forth, but you're pretty much capped for the most part. For the sake of being an entrepreneur, you get to set your own caps. You get to set your own limits if you even have any to begin with. If you have no limits, your stability will go as far as you want it to go. There's a lot to be said behind the term stability, but in terms of being an entrepreneur, it's how you set it that makes the difference. That actually makes it worthwhile because you're doing it for yourself. If you want a stable career, it doesn't mean you have to do it for somebody else. You can have a stable career on your own terms, your own business, your own key and door to open up. That's pretty much how I see it. There's a lot to be said for an entrepreneur. I'm not going to school. I don't think it would have been for me. I couldn't have waited around to make money, to then have to pay a college loan back. It's not for me. I would have just rather made it up front my damn self and kept going.
How about the idea? I mean, the idea, not that there's anything wrong, because, I admire people that are in jobs, but I know for me, to punch a clock, I remember after I came out of college, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, I got to go to work. I actually coming from the restaurant business, which is where I started at the age of 18. After I got my college degree, somebody asked me, Andre, you know, why'd you go to school for? And I was like, I like the idea that you wear a suit. And then I said to myself, how crazy is that? And I said to myself, I said, well, now you got to wear a suit every day. And I was like, I don't like the idea I have to wear a suit every day. I just want to wear a suit some of the days. And, you know, then I started to figure out, like, you know, well, when you work in a bank, you have to wear a suit all of the time. I was like, being an entrepreneur, being that, you know, that I got to say what I wore most of the times, I was like, wow. And then I started to see the downside. And again, not to say that, you know, there is jobs and people love their jobs. There's nothing wrong. But me, like you guys, I'm also an entrepreneur, and I cannot do that 9 to 5. Like even now, you know, I work 10, 15 hours a week for the last 10, 15 years. So that's something else that I could have done if I worked for someone else. I said, you know, I remember the first time I told even my partners, like, I don't want to work anymore. I mean, I'm 41 now, so can you imagine, you know, it was like 30 years. They're like, what do you mean? Even to them, it was a concept well, you're supposed to work, you're young. And I was like, well, I don't want to work. Well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, I want to go to the beach. Like, what are you going to do at the beach? I said, I want to go to the beach. I don't know, I like the beach. I just like the idea of putting my feet in the sand, even to this day. Like, the other thing that has happened to me is success has changed. I remember when I went into business, like I said, I was 18 years old. And by the age of 27, I owned like 3-4 homes. I had a chain of stores, a management company. I was retired by the age of 30. Then I got divorced. I changed, okay, because I had to pay out. But the idea was that then success started to change for me. In other words, I wasn't as hungry as when I was 25, 26 years old. Yeah. I mean, I slept, bred business. Like, you couldn't even speak to me. I became like a machine. Like, people were like, Andre, can I speak to you? I'd be like, 33 seconds. Like, but you're out. Next. Like, I really, and then after 30 years old, it shifted to where I define success different. Yeah. Rather than, you know, I want to get another home. I was like, you know, I want to hang out at the beach, not do much, and spend more time. That's why I even took on a show. I wrote a book. I spend more time with my mom. Like, for me, a lot of times, for me, success, especially as an entrepreneur, is the ability for me to say how I want to live my life. And a lot of times, I don't even answer the phone. Like, to me, success is, because I see a lot of successful people. I'm friends with a lot of people. Some of them, they have companies, $50, $100 million, but they're constantly working. Not to say there's anything wrong. Yeah. But for me, I don't define for me as that success. For me, success is the ability to do anytime I want, when I want. And for me, I don't even answer the phone. Like, I am into a lot of stuff, but I keep a schedule. And sometimes it's funny. If somebody calls me, I don't answer the phone. They're like, Andre, you didn't pick up the phone. I'm like, I know. You didn't see it? No, I saw it. They're like, what were you doing? I was like, I was busy. And they're like, what is that? I was hanging out at the beach. They were like, well, what were you doing on the beach? I was at the beach. To me, that's quality of time. To me, it's success. So what I found for me, success is not only measured by how much money, but also the quality of life. And I think entrepreneurship offers that. It offers the opportunity to say, for us to define what success is. Exactly. In other words, if I worked for, let's say, a company, like I have a lot of friends of mine that they work for Chase and so on. They can't say, well, I define success where I don't want to work. Even though they hire up, but they still have to punch into that meeting.
Yeah, and answer to somebody.
Answer to someone. Exactly. So they don't really have, even though they hire up, they still have
They don't have that freedom.
They don't have that freedom. So entrepreneur to me is very exciting because, you know, a lot of time when we hear entrepreneur, there's only like money and unlimited money. No. But it goes beyond that. For me, it went the ability for me to say, you know what, I don't want to work, and you know what, I don't want to make money all the time, and I do want to pursue other things such as, you know, writing my book, making a difference. Like, I love kids. One of the things that I do is, that's why I got into life coaching, to make a difference in kids. Because that's another thing that I want to speak about. But the way I got into business was I didn't believe in myself. And at the age of 18, I went to work for this guy. His name is Cristo Carambellas. And I remember he was the first guy that believed in me. And you know, I was working for him in a pizzeria. And you know, I thought, like, I'm always going to work for someone. I had no education. You know, I came from Italy, and he said to me, he says, Andre, you could have anything that you want. I was like, I didn't know what that meant. But he believed in me, and through believing in me, after that, I was like, I can't work for anybody else. And I went in my own business, and again, it wasn't perfect. It was up and down, but like I said, by the age of 30, I was retired.
Yeah.
And you know, and then after that, I decided to pursue hanging out on the beach, which is what I love to do. So how important is having role models? Like, did that play a part in your life, Rich?
I think just my father, watching my father work 7 days a week. He retired from Long Island Railroad. You know, he made a decent living, but he's working 7 days a week all the time around the block. Went through the whole divorce thing. So, you know, I just seen him go through a lot. And I was going to follow in his footsteps because I was like, all right, I can get into the railroad, great benefits. And then I was just like, you know, working 7 days a week, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to catch a train, you know, I'd probably miss. I just saw that wasn't for me, but my father was my role model because I saw someone who just, you know, was relentless, worked, knew what he wanted to do, took care of his family. And I just wanted to, where he was at in his life after 20 years, his income status and his way of life, I wanted to get there in 2 years. And that's really where I think this business, I saw that winning ticket for me, you know, if I was good, and we became good, you know, at it. So I really feel that he was my role model in his work effort and what he did. You know,
that sounds like Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Like that book, right? The Two Fathers. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he was able to help you in a way that was positive.
Yeah. And I think the roles are reversed. I think I'm his role model. You know, because he's, you know, he brags about me, and he's proud because I went against what he wanted me to do at one point, and then, you know, so it worked out. So he's happy.
That's wonderful. So. Great. How about you, Chris?
Again, not too different from Rich, and I think that's what makes us perfect partners. Is a lot of what we have in common is everything for the most part. My father, again, has been working for the same place 25, almost 30 years now. But going back maybe 15 years ago, I started a small landscaping business. He also started a small fencing company to do it on the side when he came home from work. Eventually built some of it up to what was worth keeping. And I always wanted my dad to get bigger. He said, Dad, why don't we buy somebody else's landscaping routes and make this thing bigger? Forever I've been doing this. But again, my father's, and again, that's why I'll also have to credit a little bit of my entrepreneurship to my father, because he did start something, you know, years ago and gave it a shot. But again, some people like the idea more of being stable and having something every week. So I'll credit some of that to my father. But I don't, I'm train of thought, I just lost it. Again, my father is a good portion of my role model. He did start me there. I think my father at some point in time did have the mentality that I have today. I just brought mine out a little bit further. And that's pretty much it. My father is where it's at. I mean, as far as a role model going forward. And he's still doing what he does to this day, 25 years later. And consistency is key, whether you're doing it for somebody else or you're your own entrepreneur, you know.
How about like reading? Like, I know for me, what has also helped me was, you know, my friend, you know, Chris, that he believed in me. And ever since that time, that's why I pursued life coaching as my second career, also as a passion, you know. But how important is it? Like, I've had mentors and role models, and I read books such as Rich Dad Poor Dad, He Made International, you know, and many of those books. And I find for me, it did impact my life. How about you guys? Did you guys read motivational books? Do you have any mentors?
Think and Grow Rich, we read. And, you know, as far as mentors, like my brother's actually taking his license today in about 2 hours. So, you know, it feels good to be a role model for him. So he's following in my footsteps, which is good. And the good thing, too, is we employ just about all our friends work for us. So it's just like one big like family in our office, which is pretty cool.
That's another thing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, sometimes, you know, we forget that we actually make a contribution to society. I mean, if we start something from nothing, and whether it's friends or just people that we're hiring through interviews and so forth, you know, we're actually making a contribution to society in general, a positive contribution. I mean, especially in times like now, where, you know, not a lot of jobs out there. Could we easily start hiring people left and right? Absolutely, and I think we have the ability to do that, and that is a major contribution. And I think sometimes, you know, we forget at times that we're actually in a position where we could contribute and help people out. You know, when a couple years ago, about a year after we started, and we started growing, I took a look around and said, Rich, you know, I said, take a look around. We actually are big enough to where we are responsible for people's livelihoods. I mean, if we screw this up, if we can't run our business, we mess with the livelihoods of our brokers, of our friends that we've known for years.
Wow.
And it was a realization that brought me to the conclusion how serious things are, and actually how far we've actually gotten.
And it keeps us straight, you know, like knowing what we have to do and we have to keep. And we have people walking all the time. We had a courier come in and ask for a job.
Yeah.
He's like, I've been out of the, you know, so he might start working for us. You know, we get people in all the time, you know, walking in the door asking for jobs and stuff. So if we could help anyone out and give them a job, it you know, helps with the economy, helps us, you know, so I feel like we're doing the right.
Yeah, you know, it's great because when I see you guys, I see, you know, guys that are hungry to make money and so on. But deep inside, you do have, you know, you have that heart. You know, I see the way you guys are speaking to make a difference. You know, when you say that, look, Rich, you know, we contribute to these people's livelihood. That shows that you care. That you care. So it's not only about yourself, but it's also about making a difference. That's so great to see, especially that you guys are young. I know right now you guys in your growth stage, but do you see yourselves, because I tell you, kids these days need role models. I know my nephews, they're like 22, 23, 24. You know, one of them is going to college, the other one is not. You know, and he, you know, he's working at the deli. No, not that there's anything wrong with working at the deli, but you know, I would love, because we see role models of people going to college, but not too many role models that are young and also make a contribution, you know, to these kids. Is there a way somehow that you guys could offer these kids something, maybe through, one way is through coming on the show, but maybe writing a book sometimes in the near future? Of course, you're welcome to come back on my show. I love to hear you guys inspire me.
I'm actually writing a book.
Excellent.
So
tell me about
pages
that.
Into it. Just a little background, you know, just on everything, the business, you know, pretty much everything we've spoke about, you know, to inspire young people.
Excellent.
You know, when I get some more time, I'll finish it, but definitely looking to try to get it published and, you know, go forward with that.
Well, I hope that, you know, can you put a date on that book? When is it going to come out?
I would say like I'll be done with it probably within a year. I mean, just because running the business and everything. And it all stems from being a role model to, if I could be a role model to my family, you know, and my brother, which he considers me, I'd like to be a role model to, you know, people just out of college, I mean, just out of high school, not knowing any direction. And that's to necessarily be my business. But, you know, if you're going to work at the deli or do something like that, go for, you got to use your ability. If you haven't figured out what you want to do or what your ability is, you got to keep searching, because when you find that, that's when you can really make something big out of yourself. It could be any business. You know, it could be delivering newspapers on a large scale, whatever it is. I mean, if you want to make something work for you, you can make it big. You can make anything happen, and that I know because I've done it. You know, and I feel anyone can do it.
That's great. Well, I urge you and to finish that book and come back, and I love to see it, and I love to have my nephews get their hands on it, and I hope you guys come back. I really appreciate you guys coming.
No, I'd love to come back. Absolutely.
Thank
you so much
for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. So here you have it, guys. College not for everybody. And till next time, thank you. Bye-bye. And I'm Andrea Luciano, and that's what I'm talking about.
I'm Rick Leidenfrost Wilson, and that's what I'm talking about.
I'm Matt Crone from Acoustically Correct, and that's what I'm talking about.
I'm Ed Fitzpatrick, and that's what I'm talking about.
I'm Nadine, and that's what I'm talking about.
My name's Ken Snyder, and that's what I'm talking about.
County Legislator Dave Denenberg, and that's what I'm talking about.
I'm Rick Laban, and that's what I'm talking about.
And I'm Andre to your left, and that's what I'm talking about.
Hi, I'm Corey Laban, and that's a wrap.